Just the 12 goals in the 3 Premier League games on Sunday. There's only one place to start. What a crazy game it was at Anfield. Liverpool 4, Spurs 2. I think that was the final score, LME, because the last 10 minutes of that game were just madness. They were just
It was
crazy.
craziness. It was great for the neutral, wasn't it, MD?
Well, that's the thing. They were great to watch. Sometimes you just don't want the final whistle to go as a neutral because the entertainment value was so high. And Spurs were even more cavalier than normal with nothing to lose. And they basically left one at the back and pushed everybody forward. So they made a game of it in the end. But overall thoughts to begin with. Liverpool 4, Spurs 2. What do you make of the game?
Well, let's begin with Liverpool.
Okay.
A justifiable victory. I thought Harvey Elliott was fantastic in this game, scoring, of course, an absolute banger. Mohamed Salah and Jurgen Klopp put their arguments from that West Ham game aside, and he started the game. And from all angles, specifically in that first half, Liverpool absolutely dominated. And I think actually Vicario single-handedly made sure that it wasn't more than 2-0 at the break, right? And then Liverpool continued and they kept on going with their goals. 25 shots, 13 of them on target, despite not having the majority of possession. It was clearly Liverpool's game to control and dominate. But as you mentioned, Tottenham gave a little bit of that spark. Richarlison woke them up a little bit and made it a little bit worrying for a tiny moment. But in the end, it was a justifiable victory for the Reds. And I think, MD, you'll agree with me here. Obviously, a Champions League place is now secured for Liverpool, which is a major thing after not getting it last season. The title is obviously now down to Man City and Arsenal. So really, these final matches are about making sure that Jurgen Klopp, gets a good send-off and Liverpool feel good about the future. So all in all, a good victory for Liverpool. And yeah, MD, I don't know where you want to go, but we can go with Tottenham anytime you want. A lot to talk about from their end.
I'm going to start with them, but before that, just a little thing that if Jurgen Klopp is booked, if he's shown a yellow card in the penultimate league game of the season, he would be suspended and unable to be on the touchline for his final game at Anfield.
And that game is against?
It's against Aston Villa.
So I'm waiting for Unai Emery to just lure him in, maybe.
Do you know what? I think unless he takes a machete and does some ridiculous Freddy Krueger moves, it'll be a stern talking to Mr. Klopp. Now you know what's at stake no matter what you do. So I'm just saying, the chances of him being shown a yellow card at Aston Villa, regardless of what he does, I think are minimal. Just pointing out that he does not want, and he'll be aware of that.
As you mentioned, though, it would be quite something if it happened, right? My God.
It's not going to happen. Right, let's get to Spurs. We'll get to the individual goals that they conceded shortly. However, Liverpool scored 4, could have scored a lot more. Have opposition managers now worked Ange Postecoglou's tactics out?
Yes, I think so. But part of it is also Tottenham are just so tired. They're just done. They're knackered. They're absolutely.
Not even had European football, so why?
Because the Postecoglou system, and to your point, managers are looking out for that. And here's the thing: you can be stoic about, and let's not forget that I think Destiny Udogi's absence is big here.
Of course.
Werner as well, etc. But the Postecoglou system, we all know about it, is we are going out there, guns blazing, all out, no matter what the score is, and we're going to wear a heart on our sleeve, and we're going to go, press.
And I love it. It's really, really good to watch.
It's fantastic football, MD. The problem is, in a marathon season, what is the best solution, do you think? Do you think that this preseason coming up this summer, and also take into consideration as well that this was the summer where Postecoglou came into the Premier League, they said goodbye to their star player in Harry Kane. There's a lot of changes, a lot. So it's commendable, the fact that he's fifth. I really salute that. But if you want to go further than that, if you want to make the Champions League, and Postecoglou is always talking about, I want to win this whole thing. If you want to win this whole thing, and I know he's not going to listen to anybody, but MD, do you think that maybe this summer there will be a moment, and I know your answer already, but do you think that the Greek-Australian manager is going to say, I don't know, mate, maybe I change my style a little bit? What do you think?
Well, I don't think he speaks like that.
I knew you were going to give me hell about my accent.
Of course. It's always a dangerous territory to go. The answer to that is clearly no. He didn't do it at Celtic. He didn't do it with Australia. He didn't do it elsewhere in Japan and the other places that he's coached. So that's the way he is. And it's brilliant to watch. Now, you've got Udogie on one side, who's out for the season, and that's a big blow because Emerson Royale got absolutely ripped to shreds by Mohamed Salah.
And he was terrible in the last game too. And by the way, just before you continue, remind every Tottenham fan that they've now lost 4 consecutive matches in the Premier League. That hasn't happened since November 2004.
Well,
so,
yeah, and on top of that, that's 1 clean sheet in the last 18 in the Premier League. You ain't going to, if you don't have a striker, an actual striker, and yes, they've got Richarlison, and yes, they've had Son, but they lost Harry Kane. So if you don't have a Harry Kane, then you've got an issue if you're only keeping 1 clean sheet in every 18 Premier League games. That ain't going to work. You're going to need to score at least 2 goals in every game to get the 3 points. And that's been a problem for Spurs this season. So what do they need in the summer? Well, you can look at the style that he plays. I think they need a goal scorer. If he wants to be the old Newcastle 4-3-3-2, then fine under Kevin Keegan. But you need that striker. Now, strikers cost money, understandably so. Defensively, Christian Romero and Mickey van de Ven. I mean, they've been fine. Van de Ven, for me, has been outstanding. Midfield, they've got the holders in there. But for the style that he plays, I think he needs his squad to be even fitter than they are right now. And I think they're fit because he wants them to go all season like this. Big picture, LME, this has been a good season for Spurs. Okay, they probably overachieved in the early stages when they were top of the table and they got the hopes up of supporters as if to say, could we? So they would have liked to have played in the Champions League. They might have got in through the back door, but the other teams in Europe didn't, unfortunately, progress as far as was liked for Champions League spots. So I think overall, if you're putting a grade on this Spurs, you don't just say, well, they lost 4-2 at Liverpool, it could have been more. If you put a grade, I think you give them a solid B for this season. It wasn't to be today, and I think you're right about tiredness. What grade are you giving Spurs for the season that they've had, their first under Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, I think a B is fair, maybe even a B plus, because getting a Champions League spot, despite being very difficult, but because of Aston Villa's loss to Brighton, I know we'll talk that in a second, like it's not impossible right now. They do have to still host Manchester City, and they have that extra game in hand, which is against City. But I think a B is a fair assessment. I think we need to begin with this. This was the season where Ange Postecoglou arrived to the Premier League, right? And he admitted it himself. Internally, he was thinking to himself, all right, how am I going to figure this out? My system without just on this season as Harry Kane has said goodbye to us. He's not just one of the best strikers in the modern game. He was literally it for Tottenham. Of course, Heung-min Son and others, contribute to that. But losing Harry Kane was a massive pivotal factor in that. Now, Postecoglou arrives and he's inviting his own system. And as you mentioned, some players that came in as well new. Van de Ven is new to the Premier League, partnering up with Guti Romero. The midfield is always trying to figure itself out. They had key injuries during the season as well. So for them to really be in a 5th position, get Europa League hopefully, and then look for the future, I think is commendable. It's not fantastic. It's not perhaps something that could have dreamt of, especially how they began. That's why we're not giving them an A. But I would say a B is a fair assessment. I just think that this summer is a very important summer to make sure that you get the right personnel. You mentioned the goal scorer. To me, the most important player that needs to come in, the best possible position is they need a controlling midfielder, somebody that can really have possession of that ball in the counter and be aware of what's happening when they lose the ball. If they can get somebody like that, because Yves Bissouma is not that player. He's like, he's a warrior in that midfield, but he's not a possession-based player. If they can just get somebody like that.
What about Bentancur? Is he not the answer?
Go on.
Bentancur, is he not the answer in that midfield? Do they already have that?
No, I don't think so. Bentancur is too inconsistent and he's too injury-ridden. I think that they need somebody that's a little bit healthier during the season and somebody that's calmer. You're not going to get him, and I'm not even mentioning that this is the player, but somebody like Douglas Luiz, somebody like that can be like somebody that can be right in front of that back line, control a little bit. They just need somebody in there. And also, because now you're going to get European football, if you get the Europa League, you really need to beefing up your squad, because now you're loading up that calendar.
There's a narrative about Liverpool here, and it's about Mohamed Salah. And he came back into the starting lineup, scored his first goal from open play since the end of March. This spat, which a lot was made of, and I think understandably so, simply because of Mo Salah's comments in the mixed zone afterwards, where he said, if I speak, there will be fire. He's reinstated in the starting 11, obviously. He's their best player. And he was brilliant today. It was old school Liverpool today. It was the fullbacks bombing forward. It was Robertson getting involved, Trent getting involved, Salah getting involved. It was the way, the old rock and roll style under Jurgen Klopp. Now, they were allowed to do that by Spurs. But Salah's the narrative. And look, he's likely, probably, still to be at Liverpool next season. Jurgen Klopp won't be. When we look back at the bigger picture over what's happened over the past couple of weeks, was it just a storm in a teacup, or does it go deeper than that with Salah and Klopp?
No, I think it was just a temporary storm in a very strong relationship. We have to remember this is a very
an argument in a marriage which has been forgotten about because they've both decided,
yeah. And I bet you even spouses say, if I speak, there will be fire. So I think it's the same. It's the same situation right here. But you started with how influential he's been. I mean, 18 goals and 10 assists. He joins Wayne Rooney as the only players in Premier League history with 10 goals and 10 assists in 5 different seasons. That's how impactful this Egyptian star is. And yes, reports are surfacing now, obviously, that he will continue at least one more season to see what will happen under the impending Arne Slot. But I think it was just a temporary lapse of a very otherwise strong relationship. And today he showed it. And I think you said something very important. Tottenham allowed them to do this, right? It's the kind of team that allows you to do that. And that's why, because the moment Tottenham lose that ball, there are acres of space where Mohamed Salah can venture on with, whether it's Darwin Núñez or Gakpo or whoever. He really had that space. In fact, he probably should have scored a few more today, actually. But he was wonderful, and I think it's now over. And like I said at the very beginning, it's about making sure that Jurgen Klopp gets a good send-off. But I think it's important for Mohamed Salah to really feel good as he enters the preseason as well.
One of the things I love about the Premier League is Mohamed Salah's smile. And normally the smile, it didn't really accompany his goal. It was like, whether it was relief or just whatever. But we saw it after he missed right at the end, because he's expecting Van de Ven to get something on it, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And he's 3 yards out, and he just needs to direct it towards goal, and it's in. And it's a swing and a miss. And he's got this big grin on his face. And look, I think it's the same for Spurs as well. They were affected by Sonny going away to the Asian Cup. Obviously, Liverpool were affected a lot by Mohamed Salah going away and getting hurt with Egypt at AFCON. And it's frustrating. It was always going to be very difficult for all 3 of the title contenders to go right to the wire. And it's been frustrating for Arsenal to lose at home to Villa, for Liverpool to lose at Everton and drop stupid points in other games. But that was the Liverpool that the Liverpool fans have grown to love under Jurgen Klopp today, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, if you want to win this Premier League title against Manchester City, you have to be perfect. And if you're not perfect, you have to hope that Man City are imperfect for long periods of time. That doesn't happen. They have bumps for sure, but then when they pick it up, they pick it up. I mean, look at what Erling Haaland did, right, this weekend against Wolves, getting that hat-trick, 23 goals. Ever since coming back from injury, he's really just become such a focal point once again. It's been brilliant. So Liverpool, Arsenal, right, anybody that really wants to compete for that Premier League title, you have to be perfect. And as you mentioned, Arsenal losing to Villa at the Emirates, that was their main bump. And now the destiny of this title is in the hands of Manchester City. And I think Liverpool, in addition, right, is in that relationship of now you have to be perfect. I mean, that's why it's amazing what Jurgen Klopp has done, because he won a Premier League title against this almost omnipotent Manchester City. It's unbelievable what he did. So you just have to be perfect. As you mentioned, injuries, tournament absentees, etc. You just have to follow that path of perfection. Otherwise, you can say goodbye, because Man City are once again looking good for a title, the 4th consecutive, Mark Donaldson. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Before we move on to the other 2 games on Sunday, let's tie up both the Spurs game and Manchester City, as you mentioned, because they play each other, okay? This is going to be something to really look forward to. Going to a pub in North London when Spurs play Manchester City, and the Arsenal fans will be there supporting Spurs, but not telling the Spurs fans who are their pals that they're supporting them. It's just, at this stage of the season, it's when the fans of teams become fans of other teams as well. But it's going to stick in the craw, as we would say in Scotland, for the Arsenal fans to support Spurs. Any chance for Spurs, the way that they play against a Man City side that's just hitting right form at the right time?
I mean, there's always a chance in everything, but this is just, it's just, they're about to meet a Manchester City who is clicking on all cylinders. And now, without the headache of the Champions League, yes, they still have the FA Cup final to deal with, but that's nothing for Pep Guardiola. Like, he can figure it out. The fact that Erling Haaland has come back and feels so good, Phil Foden, a player of the season contender, obviously won it with the Football Writers Association. This is a very good squad entering a Tottenham side that's really desperate to get something. And sometimes desperation can be your worst enemy. I'm with you. This game is going to be, for the neutral, I think it's going to be amazing. Because I think that the first minute of that game, you just know that Tottenham's going to go all out. And I wouldn't be surprised if they scored first. But I just think as the game develops, as Tottenham begin to tire, I think Man City will find those gaps. If Tottenham win this game, my goodness, like, then everything goes against convention. But it's going to be a really, really good one. What do you expect out of this one?
It's not going to be goalless.
Definitely not.
No chance. No, just the way
it was a little bit like when Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds faced Manchester City, and everybody was talking about the opposing philosophies. It's a little bit like that. But I think as the marathon of the match continues, Man City should win that one. But it's going to be a cracking game.